Welcome back, everybody, to Too Much Popcorn, the movie review podcast where Jimmy and I watch a movie and then we talk about the highs and the lows of it, things that we liked, things that we didn't like, and then ultimately we give you our opinion on whether you should watch it or not. And this week we watched the Christopher Nolan movie, one of his very first, Insomnia.
2002, Insomnia, starring Al Pacino, Hilary Swank, Robin Williams, and a whole cast of characters that, you love to look at on the screen.
How could you possibly forget Bill Pullman?
Bill Pullman's here. Edward Norton's here. Brad Pitt's here. The classics. They're all here.
Jennifer Aniston was there too.
Jennifer Aniston's here. Everybody's here in the film. And, are they here? No, actually, they're not here. It's just people. It's other actors that look like other people. That one guy with the mustache looks like Scoot McNairy.
He does.
Who, it's not Scoot McNairy, but oh boy, does it look like Scoot McNairy.
Yeah, the timeline just absolutely could not line up for that. So it can't be him, but it did look like him.
Yes. There were a lot of people in this film that look like a lot of other people, but you know who doesn't look like anybody else? Al Pacino. That man's face.
No. I specifically said that guy looks like Robert De Niro.
Shoot. You can't say it out loud. The quiet part out loud.
I'm standing by that one.
Yeah.
That's why when I watched Heat, I was so very confused because I was like, it's the same guy playing two parts?
It was like an irrevocable thing that you're like, they can't. Who's ever seen them in the same place at the same time until Heat? And
yeah,
you did, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and then one plays a detective, one plays a cop, and I was like, I don't know which one's which. But this
I don't even know the difference.
Yeah, this movie made it a little bit easier with just having Robert Tony Montana play just one detective. He was just one detective trying to solve
just one guy,
one crime.
Yes. Oh, what a crime it was. A crime of passion, a crime of spoilers. We will be spoiling, I think, a good amount of this film. So if you haven't seen it and you want plot spoilers or anything, then steer clear of this episode. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably also end up spoiling Twin Peaks because, like we pointed out with this movie, although he didn't look like it, I'm pretty sure the guy in the high school was supposed to be Bobby Briggs and she was supposed to be Laura Palmer. And dear goodness.
Why was it 1-to-1? Motorcycle, cool jacket, mysterious murder in a small town. 100% Twin Peaks.
I think Christopher Nolan, like everybody who was alive during the 1990s, watched Twin Peaks, and then he said, I'm not only going to make an homage to this someday, I'm going to pretty much copy and paste it a la James Cameron with all of his movies.
He's going to copy paste it, but fully leave out the things that make Twin Peaks interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want a
Black
really
Lodge,
fun
sort of anything interesting?
Yeah. Do you want a really fun detective character who comes in, or do you want crazy, loopy, can't sleep Al Pacino? Because
what do you mean that is a fun detective character? You've described the archetype that I love to see in all my detective films.
True. Almost
it's become the norm.
Yeah, almost as you pointed out, very Nicolas Cage-esque.
Yeah, but so suppressed feeling. Like, for how delirious and the editing of the film in such a way where you're like, okay, he's seeing his dead partner. He's, he is having these visions and, waking nightmares and sort of he can't sleep. So his dream mind is invading his waking consciousness. there was no point in the film where Al Pacino actually snapped and went actually cuckoo bonkers crazy, which I fully wanted.
Yes, I do agree with you. However, there definitely was that part where he's got the one teenager high schooler in his car and he's, playing England driving in the other lane towards an oncoming Mack truck. And
Jolly old Al Pacino.
that scene to me, I could be wrong, but to me it felt very much like Al Pacino was just like, I'm driving in the wrong lane. And Christopher Nolan's like, yo, this is not in the script, but we gotta keep this rolling.
Hey, who put that log truck on this road? This is supposed to be a closed set.
Yeah. It felt very improv in a Al Pacino just doing what he does kind of way.
Al Pacino takes the wheel. I understand. And I guess, yes, that is a sort of delirious tactic with which he took in order to, get information from this supposed best friend of the deceased. And I think that is something about Al Pacino where there's an understatedness that I don't know if it worked in this film for me, specifically in terms of he is in this Alaskan town, idyllic Alaskan wilderness, amazing shots of glaciers and, waterfalls and all this thing. The one problem being this guy's from L.A. Sure. Also, it's Al Pacino. Sure, he's from L.A. And he is not used to the near 24 hours of daylight. And hence the film Insomnia title, all that jazz. I think there should have been a break at some point where he buys a bunch of pills and tries to force himself to go to sleep. But there was just no point in the film that he was like, nah, I'm good. I tried my hardest to go to sleep by just sort of staring at the bright outside. So it was, to me, I never was believable that he's doing that bad. Because A, he didn't have a Nick Cage freakout moment, and B, there was no scene context setting up that he was even trying very hard to sleep. He was just like his quote about bad cop sleeping because he has all the weight of, his bad deeds upon him or whatever. And you're like, yeah, sure, but a bad cop can still take a sleeping pill.
It did seem very much like they were trying to have his breakdown into mental illness be because of the lack of sleep rather than alcohol abuse or pill abuse.
Right.
And so they just totally, decided to not put those in the script, although it would have helped to sell the insomnia that he's facing and also his descent into mental illness.
And guilt, guilt racked for as many things as he starts listing off in the film. He's like, oh, well, killed my partner, framed a guy.
Left a toilet seat up.
Gosh, my ex-wife would have so many of these. Yeah, he's just sort of a bad guy, but there's something about the conveyance of him that wasn't sold enough for me.
Yeah, and I think also along with that, just the reason for him being up there in particular wasn't sold to me either, where I get that there was the one older cop who I guess had worked with Al Pacino and Hap at some point in a previous part of their career. And then, when this murder happens in this idyllic Alaskan town, the older cop says, hey, I know exactly who we should call. It's this guy from LAPD homicide. Let's also not tell him that we're experiencing 24-hour sunlight right now. Normal things that happen in Alaska.
Hey, I know the best crooked cop in the biz.
Yeah. Anchorage is a lot closer. Did they think to call them? Or even Seattle? There's so many places that they could have gone to first, and also on the phone just been like, hey, just so you know, there's going to be a lot of sunlight, so those little things that you wear over your eyes on the airplane so you can sleep?
Just pick one up.
Yeah, they sell them in the airport. I know that they're $30 and overpriced, but just pick one up, otherwise you're going to go mentally insane. Pick it up at the gift shop. It's literally just right there.
You can get one with a cooling insert. It'll be really nice.
It'll say Alaska on the front, and then when you take it back to LA, everybody will be like, oh, you've been to Alaska.
Jolly old Alaska.
Jolly old LA.
Yeah, they're so is that what that first scene was trying to sell? Is the chief or whoever is, giving him the rundown of the crime is aware that Al Pacino, detective, was it Dormer, is this sort of skirting the law? Because there's a specific line that the chief says, or this, older officer who is like, you know how we do things in Alaska, something along that sort of thing. And first of all, no, he wouldn't know what you do in Alaska because he lives in LA, and you're just assuming, did you read the paper and you know that he's sort of in hot water for internal affairs issues, and you're sort of trying to do the same thing. You're like round 2 up in Alaska.
Yeah, it did very much seem like a commentary on the way that cops, used to run their business a lot more, in the 80s, where it's like, hey, we make our own rules, and stuff happens, and IA's never gonna catch us, and then IA started catching people, and then they were all salty about it because it's like, oh, people are actually holding us accountable for the stupid shit we're doing. And then it's like, yeah, so I think that is what that scene was trying to set up, was that like the old cop was like, hey, I know that you do things your way, and we're not gonna try and ream you too hard for that, but you're still facing this in LA. And
yeah, it's like, you're out here in the Alaskan wilderness, anything goes, wink wink, nudge nudge, do what you got to do. I think that was that establishing scene, which sets him up again for the rest of the film to be like, oh, well, I'm a bad guy, so I'm gonna do shady shit in alleys, I'm gonna try and place evidence places. He does all this very nefarious stuff, and you're like, oh wow, the truth would have been just so easy, but it doesn't make the film. I get it. It doesn't make the film. And there's an aspect of the writing propelling this plot forward, but then there's so many pitfalls that I'm just like, there's outs everywhere that I just could not get over. They were like cops being like, oh, well, authors, they had a book in their house. We better go talk to this author. And it's like, bro, if I have a fucking Tom Clancy book in my fucking house, you gonna go talk to Tom? If I'm murdered, Mr. Clancy doesn't have time for you.
Yeah, Sam Fisher's the one who snuck into my house and killed me. Clearly. Well, yeah, and I think also, like, so, spoiler alert, like we said, one of the main impotencies of this movie is that they chase the murderer through this foggy, rocky outcrop, and at one point,
cool
Al Pacino,
scene.
Oh, great scene. Loved the use of fog.
Very
but
cool.
Al Pacino thinks he sees the bad guy. He takes aim, he shoots, and he shoots his partner by accident.
Question mark.
Who, of course, his partner has revealed earlier to him that he has some kind of dirt on him that he's going to turn into IA, so that IA will look past the things that he has done. And so then it becomes,
because they're all crooked in LA.
Yeah. So then it becomes this whole question of like, did he shoot him to, keep his partner quiet, or was it truly an accident? But then with, like you were saying, with him being such a bad guy, it's like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And he's so inclined to just make that lie, where he could have just been like, oopsie poopsie, I thought that was the bad guy. And they'd be like, it's Alaska, we don't give a fuck.
It was really foggy.
Yeah. Well, and it like almost would make more sense if he had been the ultra clean, does everything by the book cop who does make that accident and is then like reeling from the fact that, oh God, yeah, IA is going to be on my tail after this and I might have to face consequences. Therefore, he makes that lie to try and cover up and remain the pure cop.
Oh, see, and I think there's also a possible more interesting plot line to follow where he is the pure cop. He does not have any issues with internal affairs. It's more just like, other people in his department. It doesn't really actually impact him. And then he accidentally kills his partner and then doesn't cover it up. But internal affairs is still like, well, did you do it on purpose? Like there's something there where then the guilt of it and knowing that he is a like cop killer, like partner killer. And then no one in the precinct in Alaska trusts him, and they think that they're going to watch their back. He still loses sleep. There is an interesting movie there, I think, that I would have possibly preferred to watch.
Yeah, and I think along with that, too, you have him chasing this murderer who murdered this 17-year-old girl, and then he goes and murders his partner, and his whole moral high ground is like, well, that guy's the bad guy, and he killed somebody, and it's like, yeah, but so did you, so why am I rooting for you? And
yeah,
I
and
don't know.
You can't.
You can't, because ultimately both the crimes were the same. I don't know. I had a hard time wanting to see him succeed. Not that I wanted to see the murderer get away with it. I just had a hard time being like, yeah, let's go, Al Pacino. You cover up this murder. And like,
well, I think the one thing that is slightly annoying is when he goes to the kid's like house or whatever, looking for the gun that he knows is placed there by Robin Williams' character. And he thinks it's in the vent. He wastes a lot of time, and it's in some other place, specifically in an oil can.
Oh, no. More specifically, an oil vat. They set a vat of oil, which means like it was a thing of oil.
Did the cop jump on in there and have a good old swim around in the oil?
Oh, man.
Wow. So the thing with that scene is, right, you're like, he needs to get the gun from there. So that why? Because if they aren't able to follow through with the framing of the high schooler, what was his next step? Just to put it back on the actual killer somehow? Like, work it out in that way?
So he's trying to pin it on the murderer and, make sure that it's the murderer being held accountable for it rather than the boyfriend. And so I guess that's why he went there, after it's revealed that the boyfriend could have been the one who shot her, blah, 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 or was the one who shot the partner and therefore had the gun. Yeah, it got so convoluted.
Well, it's like a full-on another internal affairs mishap that could just lead to, horrible things down the line, because Al Pacino's character is lying. The murderer is lying because they're the murderer. The kid, I think that's another thing that sucks, because it's from the perspective of cops did a good job, so the murderer is going to jail, and the murderer was this high school kid, right? And us, the audience, we know, A, sure, the kid's an asshole, but he didn't murder her. We know this as a fact. B, that's the more compelling thing, is Al Pacino finally having that flip to, oh, I probably should fess up for all these other reasons. But the main reason that, like, myself, I look at the situation as an outside perspective. I don't care about any of these characters. The kid going to jail for a falsely accused murder charge is the bottom fucking rung of society here. Like, Al Pacino bottomed out and then went further, where he's like, there's the cabin in the top, and then underneath there's a tunnel. That's where he's fucking griming about in there, being like, I'm fine with sending this kid to prison. That sucks. Like, fully. And I don't even know if in the film it's conveyed that that's the thing that breaks him to sort of like finally start to follow the actual thread and try and end it all. It just feels like he decides for another reason that's unexplained.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, because you would expect somebody to be doing the investigation right. And you almost have that with, what's her name? Anne Hathaway?
Hilary Swank's character.
Swank's character.
Ellie.
Who she's like doing the investigation right, but then she gets put on the investigation of the murdered partner.
Yes.
And so then you have the like less competent cops doing the investigation on who killed the girl, and it's just falling through, and then it's also falling through because of Al Pacino's character. And I think it would have made more sense if it had been like, the cops are doing everything right. They're finding everything out. They're on the right path to get to the right person who did this. But Al Pacino is like subverting everything they're doing. And because of his actions, he's causing them to look at somebody else and causing them to mess up the investigation.
Yeah, but they were fully incompetent feeling the entire film. Is like anytime they're given something to do, they're just sort of like, whatever, could be anybody. And then Ellie gets involved and you're like, oh, okay, she has the most agency in terms of finding a tie between an author, that there's a book in the house, there's a book in her bag she really cared about. It's like putting her listening to Al Pacino's character, which again also sucks because her agency is then taken away by like, everything I learned was from Al Pacino. And you're like, just fucking be written as a fully competent person.
Yeah.
You can be a fully competent person. You don't have to be, I remember the fables from Detective Dormer, and he said one time you got to look at the details or you don't blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, so Ellie is also incompetent. The mustache man is incompetent. Scoot McNairy is incompetent. So yeah, it's like they're fully tripping over their own asses without Al Pacino doing anything because he's also failing to obfuscate the murder that then Ellie, figures out because he says don't be done with the investigation, which is again another sidestep of her agency of just being like, I did my due diligence and I trust Al Pacino. And it's like, why do you trust Al Pacino? He is literally the most untrustworthy looking fucking face in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's infuriating.
I think if we're talking about selling it better, I think it would have been sold better if they just had not told us or really given us a clue to who did this. They set up pretty early in the movie, here's who did this crime, and then we follow who did that crime. And I think it would have been sold a lot better if it really was more of a mystery where it's like, somebody did this crime. We are pointing you to look with the cops in this investigation towards this person. And then as Al Pacino is messing up the investigation, it starts moving a different way. And then you, the viewer, also starts believing that, maybe it is that person, even though it should be that other person.
That would have, yes, if there was a subversion in terms of, I don't know, I think Glass Onion did this really well with the sort of showing, the movie shows you everything, but you still have to figure it out. And in this one, it's like Al Pacino knows. And so you're like, oh, well, okay.
I think along with that too, like David Lynch said it really well with season 1 of Twin Peaks, that the mystery is what keeps us watching, and the mystery is what keeps us fueled in these things. Is we want to know, we want to figure it out, and so we're going to keep watching it to figure it out. And then, like he said in season 2, it then gets revealed, and I'm not spoiling that one because you got to watch that show.
Oh,
no.
Yeah.
But it gets revealed, and then after that point, you're less interested because you're like, well, I already know who did it, and I care why, but I care less about why.
Yeah.
And in this movie,
I think why Fire Walk with Me is like a good summation.
Yeah.
Is like a good retelling of it. Like if you haven't watched the show, Fire Walk with Me is like a phenomenal way to experience sort of the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks in like a little contained thing.
Hot take alert, it's heavy. It's a heavy watch.
Oh yeah, super heavy. Like that's the thing, is the emotional baggage is all there in season 2 and it plays out in that full thing. But if you have like season 1 to look back on and be like, oh yeah, he likes coffee and pie, I love that. But the movie's just like, no, fuck you. You have to deal with all of this at once. And you're like, oh well, I hate this.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And so when we're looking at the why of why these people did their crimes, I guess I wasn't sold with the why of why this crime was done. It was done in a heat of passion. Just to reiterate, we were talking about this movie again, not Twin Peaks.
And no, we're back on this where Robin Williams is the murderer.
Yeah, spoiler.
And not Paul Dano.
No, or the guy from Seven. Whoops, forgot his name. The actual bad guy.
Yeah, I don't think Robin Williams was a good pick.
I think he was a good pick for like either a serial killer or like a multi-murderer if his character had been written better.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah.
I just like, I get that he had this.
Don't undercut what I said by saying that he should have been written better. I'm agreeing.
Okay, my bad. But like, what I'm saying is like, I think he would have been a good murderer in a different movie where it's like, yeah, fucking put him in The Batman as the Riddler, and like, it would have been.
Well, that's the thing. I think he is in some movie where he is like I think it's like Instant Photo or something. He's some creepy dollar store, photo guy, and he stalks people and all this kind of stuff. And it is believable in that film. And he can do it. He had the range. He was a phenomenal actor. But there's something about the writing of this being like, you're portraying, and it's the way he talks too, is he does sound like a writer, right? He's sort of like, he sounds, on his high horse. He talks in this certain way that Robin Williams is able to talk when he wants. And it was believable that he was a writer, but just because he wanted control of this one situation, the crime of sort of passion, but also it's not explained that he was a creep or that he is a creep. It's just sort of you're in Al Pacino's mind for the film, and Al Pacino's mind is a bad place.
Yeah.
This character, he's this tenured, drug and murder detective, and you're like, okay, well, he's gonna have a bias towards these things, and every line that he keeps saying to Robin Williams' characters, especially on the ferry, he's talking to him and he's like, "You're a creep. I hate you. You're doing all this stuff," and Robin Williams doesn't have a reaction of distaste or agreement or even disagreement. It's just sort of a nonplussed, that's your opinion, man, sort of thing that caught me off guard in terms of, because I was like, okay, well, we know he did it because he's calling Al Pacino's character, and the only witness to this crime is the murderer. So you've solved. Again, it's the mystery is open. You're done. Way too early to drop that on us. Sorry. I would have actually preferred, there was a line, Al Pacino goes back to his hotel and the lady's like, "Oh, your partner called earlier." And then he gets on some phone call with IA and they're like, rah, 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 rah. And he's like, I'll tell you, IA. The vagueness of your partner called and him starting down this road of insomnia and delirium is like, there's something interesting about Robin Williams lying to him in some way and then pretending to be some sort of counsel or internal affairs and showing up as the partner and not, laying all his cards on the table, saying that he's something like that, right?
They should have, thrown a voice modulator on the phone when Robin Williams called, because I'm sorry, Robin Williams, very distinct voice.
Yes. He was like, "Hello."
Yes.
And then he called and you're like, "Oh my God, it's him."
Yeah. Do 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 do. Like, wait a second. Yeah, throw a voice modulator on there so you're like, oh shit, who's calling Al Pacino? Like, I don't know. And again,
it could
adds
be anybody.
More air to the mystery. But when you pick it up and it's Mrs. Doubtfire on the other side, you're like, I know who this is, and therefore I know who did this crime.
I would have killed for a scene where he goes into his apartment and he has a pie on his face.
Oh my God. Or just like, Al Pacino thinks that he's catching Robin Williams, but it's Robin Williams doing all these different characters, and he's like, who is this man?
So that movie exists, though, right? Like Split, M. Night did it?
Kinda, but I want more like Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But
rest in peace, Robin.
Yeah. Yeah, and then to go along with that, too, like, it would have been great if, like, Robin Williams had shown up as his partner and, like, tried helping him figure out the crime, but, like, did it wrong and drove him insane that way or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, is there is the mystery being solved too early, and therefore the whole reason to watch the movie becomes the secondary sort of, well, how do I get away with murder?
That's the other thing that really kind of rubbed me wrong about Robin Williams and Al Pacino's like relationship in this.
Yeah.
Is Robin Williams, his whole argument for why Al Pacino should like lie about this is like, he's like, hey, we don't want you to look like you're the bad guy here, because it's gonna like cause all the courts to throw out all your other crimes. And it's like, okay, yeah, but you've already set up that Al Pacino's character is a bad guy. And then along with that, you also have Robin Williams, who like throughout the movie, he's trying to set up the teenager to look like he did the crime. And while he's doing that, he's like, look, Al Pacino, we're working together on this because we think the same way. Ooh, we think the same way. And it's like, yeah, because you both are bad guys. Now, if this was the classic conundrum where you have the good guy who is, you know, in turmoil with his inner conflict, and the bad guy saying, oh, we think alike. We think alike because we're not so different, you and I. You know, as much of a cliche as that is, it really is a good writing element in that it does cause your character to be like, oh shit, am I the bad guy? And I think that would have been sold a lot better in this, rather than Robin Williams being like, we think alike, you and I, and Al Pacino being like, we do. In fact, I'm kind of a lot worse than you.
You don't know the things I've done.
Yeah. You got Robin Williams, who's done one murder, and I'm pretty sure Al Pacino's character murdered a lot more people.
Yeah, I think he shot. That wasn't his first partner.
Yeah.
Side.
He came up with the whole bullet in a dead dog thing way too fast.
He was in a dark alley feeling sick about himself. He sees that dead dog. He's like, oh, I've done this one before. The old dead dog in an alley.
Yeah. So yeah, just their relationship a little bit whack.
Little whack. You know what else is a little whack?
These
Us
ads.
taking a little break.
Oh, I really lost my lunch on that.
What, you shit your pants?
Just like Al Pacino 3 times.
Look, it's a weird line to say, I lost my lunch, and then not to have mouth deep in a barf bag. Like, what are you saying?
Dude, best moment of this movie, though, was 100%. They're flying in. There's like a little bit of turbulence. He doesn't like burp or like kind of vomit in any way. And his line is, oh, I lost my lunch.
Well, it's bad enough that the pilot looks back there and then he's like, oh, Al Pacino just shit his pants.
Yeah.
Because there's no explanation. Where did the lunch go? Or did he like drop it? He had something on his lap and then the turbulence happens and it's on the ground. No, he shit himself.
100%. Yeah. It didn't take a detective from LA to figure that out.
No. Okay, I do have a question. Is there a film here, not written, not this film, it's not this film, but is there a film that follows the same narrative, but it is, again, the pure cop who accidentally kills his partner, starts going delirious from lack of sleep, Robin Williams shows up so that's the thing, is like Robin Williams shows up and pretends to be the old partner or new partner, and then is faking him out?
I think I know. I have an answer to this, and it's not going to be 100% like, here's a copy and paste what you're looking for. But I think Seven is a really good example of.
Or Memento. Memento has the full on, like, I'm being helpful psych.
Yeah. Seven does a really good job of having, like, you have a grizzled cop, but you also have like a nubile cop who sees the world in a very certain way, who then gets corrupted by the serial killer, who does a good job of being a serial killer and a creep. Kevin Spacey, boom, actual bad guy.
It.
Yeah.
Actual bad guy.
Actual
real
cannibal.
Life bad guy.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that movie did what this one struggled to do.
Yeah, and I think there's another thing of the framing. It comes back to the writing a lot for me, is the framing of Al Pacino being like, I've followed serial killers, I've done all this sort of stuff involved with maybe single murders, all this kind of stuff. But he's even on the plane and mentioning like, oh, this is only the first one of many. And then Robin Williams' character comes in and is like, it was an accident. It was the one time. I'll never do it again. Scout's honor. And you're like, okay, but Al Pacino already was saying it's going to happen again. He's going to get, the bloodlust. So I don't trust Robin Williams' character because the movie's been set up to, and just the world we live in, saying like, oh, a brutal murder of a young girl, and you get away with it, then you're probably going to try and do it again, right?
Yeah. And I think when they set up that whole concept of like, this killer made the first murder, there's going to be more, in my mind, that triggered the similarity to Seven, where a murder is done. It's very obvious that it's going to be one out of, it is the first of the 7 deadly sins. There will be others like it. And so I was like, oh, and in that movie, yes, there are others like it. And in this movie, they were like, oh, this is the first one. And then just, there was nothing about that. It stopped at the one.
But it set it up, right? Am I wrong in that they set up the shoe and then you're waiting for it the whole movie and you're like, is he gonna? And then the very end, you're like, oh, he was going to try it again. Look.
But like almost out of necessity rather than like a desire. It was very much, it wanted to be.
Well, it's bad.
Yeah.
It was written poorly because he's saying his one reason why he essentially lured her there was he saw her eyes while being interrogated and saw that she knew that Al Pacino had actually shot his partner.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, so you went from I accidentally killed a 17-year-old girl with my bare hands, it took 10 minutes, to I got to kill this cop now to save my other cop Dunkachino buddy because I'm just, when does it end?
Yeah. And it really did seem like the movie wanted to be a serial killer, hunt chase type movie. But it started with a accident murder and then turned into almost a murder of necessity. Like, I didn't get serial killer from that.
No, it's almost like they wanted Robin Williams' character to be a serial killer, but they only set up the one. And so you're like, okay, so does he have bodies in his backyard? Is this not his first one that we don't know about? And you're like, no, it was just the one. He's got a high intellect. He's a good writer. He went to college and he's gonna do it again. Even
with this, Al Pacino goes to his apartment and you're like, oh, what messed up things is he gonna find in his apartment? Is there gonna be like pictures of other victims? Is there gonna be like torture weapons and bodies strung up from the ceiling? No. It's actually a nice place. He's got 2 doggies, and there's some books around, and it's actually a nice little place.
Picture of himself.
Yeah.
At his cabin.
And it's like, oh, okay. And then later, they go to the cabin, and you're like, all right, this is the lair. Oh, he's going to go under the cabin, and there's going to be grizzled bodies.
Meat hooks.
Ooh. And it's like, no, more bookshelves. It's got a little shack in the back that's kind of run down, but that's really just a lack of maintenance more than anything.
He was a nice guy.
Yeah. So, and that's not to say that this was a bad movie. It really does seem like the lack here was writing. For the most part, I would say the directing was good. The editing, woof.
Oh boy.
Let's hit that real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were some scenes, like there are running scenes. Okay, before you even get to the running scene, look. And I know exactly what you're talking about, but there were multiple talk scenes, 2-point shot, people talking, where they're like, here's a cut, here's a cut, here's a cut, here's a cut, and here's a cut, here's a cut, here's a cut. And you're like, just hold on, someone. Yeah.
Please.
Do some slow pans if you need movement. Do a dolly. Do a truck. I don't care. Don't give me... Brah, brah, brah.
It was painful.
Yeah.
to watch these people talking about stuff that I then tuned out because it was hard to listen to it when it's happening in a rapid fire type of, and they're not talking like bullet point to bullet point. It was usually just Al Pacino talking to one person, and then it's cutting between. You're
Yeah.
like, is Al Pacino that bad at delivering lines that you're having to cut to his over the shoulder so you can ADR him? Like, what's going on?
Oh, and then with the chase scenes, like if you've seen Taken 3, I'm pretty sure that is the same editor who did this movie, because it was
Does
almost
the 3 in Taken 3, is it the E?
yeah, it's the Take 3 in.
Okay, good.
But it is very much like Al Pacino, his agreement to do this movie said that he wasn't allowed to run at any point ever. And so anytime he was walking faster than a walk, they had to get a stunt person to do that. And they had to continuously cut from the stunt person walking faster than a walk to Al Pacino's face to sell you that he's the one doing it, to back to the stunt person, to the face, to the person. And it was RUFF.
Or any sort of physical altercation was also just as hard to follow.
Yeah.
It's almost like I couldn't even tell how strong anyone was because it felt like Robin Williams was just fucking like beating down people. Like Al Pacino's on the ground now, and you're like, oh my God, Robin Williams, what are you? Are you superhuman? What's going on? You just clubbed that woman in the back of the head, but I didn't really see it. It was just out of frame. So
yeah, and then along with that, they also did in the scene where Al Pacino's chasing whoever through the fog. Dude, they broke the 180 rule like
they broke all
times.
the rules. I mean, that scene I allow it because it is specifically supposed to be confusing.
Yes, but you can sell confusion through different ways that don't.
Yes. No, and I'm still not saying it was the same cuts. You're like, there's a foot in the pond, and it's whipping around, and it's behind a tree, and now there's so many things whipping by, and you're like, just hold on something, please.
Yeah.
You can break the rule if you really need to, if you're really trying to sell me on becoming very disoriented, but just stop. It was the stilted shots were just so common. It was hard to be like, it was hard to even enjoy the wilderness aspect of it because you're like, here's a cup. You're like, oh my God, this glacier is beautiful. It's so huge. They're flying over, and you're like, oh, I lost my lunch. And you're like, okay, well, shut up and just let me like look at the majesty of Alaska for a second.
Yeah, there were some great shots of Alaska though. The
100%.
The flying in, you get some great seracs. There was a nice glacier near the end. Definitely, this movie highlighted the beauty of Alaska. So. Good job, Mr. Nolan, for doing that. See, I'm inclined to say, like, ultimately, and you're not going to believe this after the way I just, like, ripped this movie apart, but ultimately, I am going to say it was a good movie. Like, I would say that there was enough, like, yes, get the editing way the hell out of this movie.
Can we get a director's cut? Can somebody come back and fix this one?
And I almost want to give the editing a pass because, like you were talking, it was supposed to be jarring. And especially as Al Pacino is, losing his mental sanity, it becomes more common that there's, jarring images thrown in there, stuff that you're like, oh, did I just see that? And also like these just rapid cuts. And so it's like they were trying to use that to sell his descent into madness. But in the way that Fight Club did it right, this movie did it wrong. But I still like that they tried it. And so there's a lot that, like, they were trying to do good. And I think it was good for some reasons. But, yeah, ultimately I'm going to say this one's a not watch for me.
Yeah, I can almost agree with you that it is a good film, but there were too many inconsistencies for me to wrap up in this sort of slapdash sort of beautiful cinematography. In points, it was brutal. In some, you can see Nolan's style in this film. Straight up, his later films, he does the same thing. He gets better editors. He gets those IMAX cameras, really pops out those shots. But yeah, it's not his best work. It wasn't. It's sort of a sum of its parts for me, where you're like, I will not, I will tell you not to watch this film. And I generally like Christopher Nolan films, but this one rubbed me the wrong way, and I can't get over it.
Yeah, this one is definitely like a freshman film from Mr. Nolan, where it's like, you do see those things where you see them later in his movies, and you're like, hey, you did it right there. And in the same way that in each of his movies, he tries to do something either with cinematography or storytelling to help sell ultimately the story. I don't know if this, was because it wasn't his story and he didn't know how to adapt it properly, or it was because he was a new, filmmaker or what. But clearly, like, look at Memento. That movie did it right.
Yes. And that was written by him and his brother, I think.
Yeah. And so that's why I think, like, good movie, but after watching 2 hours, I just want to save you, the, listener of this podcast, 2 hours to, like, there's nothing special here.
No.
And I think that's my biggest gripe with it is, like, at the end of this
Prisoners.
Movie, dude, oh, God, yeah, go watch Prisoners. I think we need to go... Yeah, no, go watch Prisoners, go watch Seven. This movie just wasn't enough to really make me want to tell somebody to take 2 hours out of their life.
Yeah. Robin Williams is great in it. But that's the thing is, if I at the film's end see the quote unquote bad guy get his just desserts and bite the dust in some way, and I'm not fully satisfied by that, I don't think you set it up right. I don't think I'm sold on, both bad guys get their just desserts, but I still felt unsatisfied. I was like, oh, Internal Affairs is going to have a field day with this one. Yeah, I don't know. Something about it.
Yeah, it was a nice try, but it was like a swing and a miss. Great swing. Big miss.
Big miss. I do. Yes. Though I'm circling back. I commend it for trying. There are the aspects of Nolan trying to, go, oh, here's a whipping shot. It's a flash, but it's not painful to watch, and it sells losing your sanity because of lack of sleep, and that's sold in the film. But that's the only thing that was sold, is you're like,
or
this
even
worked.
You get that one shot of him scrubbing something that plays occasionally throughout the film.
Right.
There's a scene of him sitting in a chair scrubbing something. You can't really tell what it is because he's doing a certain Nolan thing that he does to kind of obfuscate the scene itself. And then it pays off in the end. I'm not going to spoil that one. That one was actually pretty cool. It was
there
twist.
Payoff, though?
Yes, in the way that, like, he finally revealed what you were looking at, and, like, it helped to add to the story.
Yeah, but did it matter at that point?
No, because even, like, okay, you know what? I will spoil it. It's fucking Al Pacino talks about how he hunted down a serial killer who killed a child, and there wasn't enough evidence to pin it on that guy. And so he took blood and planted it on the guy who killed the child so that the, crime would get fully put on him. Now, ultimately Al Pacino's saying this as if he did something super bad, and like, he's like, oh, look at all the bad things I've done. And I'm like, wait, that's all the bad things you've done? Because you shot your partner. That was messed up. You shouldn't have done that. But the planting the blood, like, that's almost excusable.
That's the thing, is he fully shot and killed his partner. He's collaborating with a known killer who has admitted to his crime. And all he is you're shown he dabs a little blood on it on some fucking cloth, and he's suddenly the worst cop in LA. Like, no, I don't buy it.
Yeah, there was no consistency between what he actually did and what he's accused of by IA.
Hap got off easy. Hap was a triple murderer.
Yeah. Also, yeah. Oh, I don't know.
So yeah, it's a double not watch.
Also, gotta clear it up because I said it and I know it's now out in the ether. Don't plant evidence on people. Don't do it.
Who would have taken that from?
I don't know, man. Somebody's gonna be like, "Hey, Aaron said that we could plant blood on people." He said it. That's legal advice now.
He said it was a good thing to do.
No, I'm just saying that it wasn't consistent with compared to what Al Pacino was saying he was doing.
Yeah, the story, the paper being brought up, and the amount of guilt that is racking this character's mind, and he's just going, "Oh, I took a dropper and I went to his house," and you're like, "Okay, well, fine."
Al Pacino, you also pooped your pants earlier. Like,
I think, look, we have to be the smarter audience and go, it's not the first time he did it. Who knows how many murderers he got put away through evidence that he had to plant or through some other means. And so the comment from Robin Williams saying, you know, this gets out, everybody you sent in is suddenly back out on the streets. And you're like, okay, well, multiply 30 years as a detective to however many cases. You can extrapolate from there. You could be the smart audience here, Aaron. Come on, let's.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be doing the homework to make up excuses for bad writing.
Yeah.
So I elect not to, and I go, look, what he did, it was bad, but also he probably should have just fessed up to shooting his fucking partner and ended the movie.
Should have just not been a fucking bad guy.
Shouldn't have been a bad guy. That's the moral of this story.
Yeah.
Insomnia, 2002.
2002. Christopher Nolan.
Thank you so much for listening to a little rambling review here of Insomnia, 2002. This has been Too Much Popcorn. So if you, at first, grabbed a little popcorn, you just grab a little bit more, and then you grab a little bit more, and then you have too much popcorn. And that's the basis of this show, where Aaron and I review movies. So thank you so much for listening. If you have the time to leave a 5-star review on wherever you're listening, it'd be amazing. We'd love to see it. But that's going to do it for this week's review. We'll see you again in a couple weeks for the next film that we decide to talk about. Bye.
Bye.